Imagine a scenario where your loved one's health depends on a single medication. Now imagine one man, driven by pure greed, raising the price of that drug by over 5,000% overnight. For thousands of families in 2015, this wasn't fiction, it was reality. Martin Schrelly made millions, while others paid the price with their health. Welcome back. I'm your host, Richard, and this is the story of the most hated man in America.
Pharma Bro, Martin Schrelly.
CEO Martin Schrelly.
Pharmaceutical CEO Martin Schrelly was...
Martin Schrelly. Just gonna say the name to get Contessa all fired up. He's arguably the most hated former pharmaceutical CEO in America. He appeared in federal court in Manhattan today.
Before the world knew him as the Pharma Bro, Martin Schrelly was a Wall Street prodigy. The son of immigrants in Brooklyn, he was a brilliant, if notoriously difficult personality right from the start. He was so academically advanced that he landed an internship at a Wall Street hedge fund as a teenager. This is where he learned the game. In his early 20s, he founded his first hedge fund, Elia Capital Management. His strategy was aggressive, and his reputation grew fast. He became known for short-selling biotech stocks, which is basically betting that a company's stock will fail. Then he'd go on social media and financial forums to publicly trash the companies he was shorting, a tactic that earned him plenty of enemies long before he got into pharmaceuticals. But his first ventures weren't exactly stable. One of his early funds completely imploded after a short sale went sideways, which ended with Lehman Brothers suing him for over $2 million. Unfazed, he just founded another fund, MSMB Capital Management, and kept up his high-risk, high-reward strategy. This was the blueprint for the man the world would soon know. Incredibly smart, pathologically confident, and utterly ruthless. He wasn't just playing the market. He was trying to bend the rules to his will. His ambition wasn't just to be rich, it was to be the smartest, most powerful guy in any room. It was that all-consuming hunger for status that led him from finance into an industry that deals not in stocks, but in human lives. In 2015, Martin Schrelly made the move that would define his legacy as a villain. Through his new company, Turing Pharmaceuticals, he bought the rights to a 62-year-old drug called Daraprim. This isn't some common medication. It's the standard treatment for toxoplasmosis, a parasitic infection that can be a death sentence for people with weak immune systems, like AIDS and cancer patients. For decades, the drug was affordable at about $13.50 a pill. Almost immediately after getting his hands on it, Shkreli jacked the price up to $750 a pill, a spike of over 5,000%. The backlash was instant and deafening. Patient groups, doctors, and politicians from both parties erupted in condemnation. He was hauled before Congress. The media painted him as the face of pure corporate greed. But instead of backing down, Shkreli leaned in. He seemed to love the outrage. In interviews, he was smug and completely unapologetic.
And doctors and patient groups saying they can't access this drug, are you gonna change the price?
No.
Arguing the price hike was just good business to fund future research. He jumped on social media and live streams to taunt his critics, calling them imbeciles. His arrogance seemed to have no limits, perfectly captured by his purchase of the one-of-a-kind Wu-Tang Clan album.
But how's the album?
100% none of your business.
For a reported $2 million. While the world was furious about sick people being priced out of medicine, Schrelly was flaunting his wealth and trolling the internet. He wasn't just a CEO, he'd become a caricature of a supervillain, and he played the part with absolute relish. With the entire country against him, you'd think Martin Schrelly was about to face legal consequences for the Daraprim price hike. The outrage was everywhere. But here's the twist that defines his entire story. Hiking the price of Daraprim wasn't actually illegal. As morally repulsive as it was, a pharma company in the United States has the right to set its own prices. It was a massive loophole in the American healthcare system, and Schrelly had just driven a Mack truck right through it. So, despite the congressional hearings and the public fury, He wasn't arrested for price gouging. When FBI agents showed up at his apartment one cold December morning in 2015, it wasn't about Daraprim at all. The charges that put him in handcuffs had nothing to do with him being the Pharma Bro. They came from his past, from his days as a hedge fund manager, years before touring pharmaceuticals was even a thing. The world wanted him to pay for his heartless greed, but the justice system was coming for him for a totally different crime: good old-fashioned financial fraud. He wasn't going down for being the hated drug CEO. He was going down for being a con artist. The case against Shkreli was complicated, but the story was simple: lies and deception. Prosecutors showed how he had defrauded investors at 2 of his hedge funds. He lied about his credentials. He lied about how well the funds were doing, and when he lost a catastrophic amount of money on trades, he lied about that too. To cover his tracks and pay back his angry investors, he ran what prosecutors called a Ponzi-like scheme. He was secretly taking money and stock from his next company, a biotech firm called Retrofin, to pay off the debts from his last scam. In short, he was robbing Peter to pay Paul, using a public company as his personal piggy bank. His trial was a complete media circus. The same arrogance he used to troll people online became a huge liability in court. He smirked, rolled his eyes, and treated the whole thing with contempt.
On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question.
His behavior got so bad that after he was convicted, but before he was sentenced, the judge threw him in jail. Why? Because he posted on Facebook offering $5,000 for a strand of Hillary Clinton's hair, which was deemed a threat. In August 2017, a jury found him guilty on 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of conspiracy. At his sentencing, the mask finally cracked. The smug, unrepentant Pharma Bro broke down in tears, begging the judge for a light sentence. It was a stunning reversal, but it was too little, too late. He was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. The master manipulator was finally undone by his own ego. While Shkreli was in prison for securities fraud, the Daraprim scandal, his original sin, still hadn't been legally punished. But that was about to change. The Federal Trade Commission and several states hit him with a separate civil lawsuit, accusing him of breaking antitrust laws. Their case argued that Shkreli didn't just raise the price. He built a whole scheme to illegally stop any generic competitors from ever reaching the market. Touring had restricted access to Daraprim, making it impossible for other companies to get the samples they needed to create a cheaper version. This wasn't just setting a high price. This was illegally crushing the competition to protect his monopoly. In January 2022, a judge delivered the verdict everyone had been waiting for. The court found Shkreli's scheme was egregious, deliberate, repetitive, long-running, and ultimately dangerous. He was ordered to pay back $64.6 million in profits. And, in the most fitting punishment imaginable, he was banned from the pharmaceutical industry for life. An appeals court locked in that lifetime ban in January 2024, making sure the Pharma Bro could never legally touch a drug company again. He was finally held accountable for both of his great scams: the financial fraud that duped investors and the monopolistic greed that threatened patients' lives. By the way, tell me in the comments, do you think the punishment fit the crimes? Martin Schrelly was released from prison to a halfway house in May 2022 after serving a little over 4 years. If you were expecting a reformed man, you'd be disappointed. Banned from pharma, he immediately launched a new venture called Drug-like, a software company claiming to use Web3 and blockchain to democratize drug discovery. The move was such a transparent attempt to sidestep his lifetime ban that the FTC immediately started looking into it. He's back on social media, hosting live streams, and trying to force himself back into the public eye, clinging to the notoriety that made him a star. His story is a cautionary tale for our time. He's a product of a system that can reward ruthless behavior, with a personality perfectly built for an internet age that too often mistakes infamy for influence. Shkreli wasn't just a criminal. He was a cultural phenomenon who exposed our deepest anxieties about big pharma and capitalism itself. He scammed his investors, and he scammed the American public. But in the end, the biggest con he ever pulled was convincing himself that he was untouchable. And that was the one lie that finally brought him down. See you next time.